What's good, guys? Welcome back to another video. I really hope you watched the video from yesterday on Bitcoin and oil, and I really hope that you managed to take it because both of them ended up being bangers. Now, while I didn't ultimately manage to call the Bitcoin trade on Twitter because, I was just busy doing something else, I did at least manage to notify you guys about the setup that we were looking for. And today we're going to try to do the same. Today's Wednesday. We have FOMC later, and we have a lot of earnings reports from big tech companies and AI. And so if there is going to be a day where there's going to be an insane amount of volatility, chances are it's going to be today. And so without any further ado, let's just dive right into it. And let's just kick things off on Bitcoin. What a banging setup, right? Yesterday, you got the CISD and then boom, dump during the New York session. Easy peasy. It's just the type of results that you can get when you follow a proven system, which, by the way, if you'd like to work with me and my team, basically on a one-on-one basis where we handhold you through every single process and just get you successful over the next 90 days, feel free to click the first link in the description box below. If that doesn't sound like something you'd be interested in, don't worry, we're going to get back into the video. Anyways, starting things off with Bitcoin, we have a bearish daily bias. And so in terms of the trade that we're going to look at, it's going to be towards the short side. Now, here is the problem. In terms of the 1 hourly chart, you have gotten some sort of a CISD, right? Towards the bullish direction. And immediately, my instinct is that I'm no longer going to be that interested in Bitcoin. There's only really one potential possibility here that I would look for and that I would consider a high probability kind of like trade. Now, let me just remove everything from this chart because it is getting kind of confusing. In terms of the 1 hourly chart here, you have this order block and you have these relatively equal highs. So the only setup that I would look for personally is sweeping these relatively equal highs, filling in that order block, and then getting that bearish CISD sometime during the New York session. Now, the thing about New York session today is because you have FOMC at 2 p.m., right? That's the news window. It doesn't mean that you want to wait all the way until, that 2 p.m. window to be trading, right? So you can kind of treat the New York morning session as its kind of own session. So there's going to be like kind of one window between 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then there's going to be kind of like a second window between 1 p.m. to about 3 p.m. because 2 p.m. is the news. So the hour for news to the hour after news is usually the best kind of like timing windows to trade. So I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up getting kind of like a second manipulation during the New York morning. And if that happens, then this is going to be the setup to look for. This is the only one that I would look for personally. I would not try to short this before these relatively equal highs are taken, just because jumping in too early or thinking that, relatively equal highs will not get swept is a very common reason why you might end up in situations where, your overall trade idea is correct, but then you just end up getting swept down before the price actually moves in your favor, right? So try to, not trade into relatively equal highs or lows. Ideally, we want to be trading into strong highs or strong lows. Now, what is the definition of a strong high and strong low? Well, if you take a look at gold over here, right? At 1 a.m., you got the sweep of a high and then immediately followed by a CISD, right? This is the kind of setup that you want to look for with Bitcoin, and why you don't want to be jumping in too prematurely, thinking that, okay, just because the price is going down, but it leaves behind relatively equal highs. So you just start jumping in and eventually you're going to get swept out, right? And this is just an example on gold because I was looking at the chart earlier, because once you got that CISD, this was a beautiful, beautiful little 2-hour trade. So I'm basically starting London off already on a very good note, although gold, as you will come to realize later, you're not too late yet. So I'm going to share that gold setup later, but just understand this is the rationale behind why we don't want to be jumping too early on this liquidity level, because it just is still engineering liquidity. And so anything that happens in between until these highs are taken, I think we're just going to ignore, not because it's a bad setup, but because there's just, better setups, which I will show you shortly on NASDAQ, gold and euro. And here's the thing about having access to Forex, right? It's not that, Forex is better than Bitcoin or crypto is better than Forex. It's not about that. When you are doing traditional trading, kind of like what I'm showing here, where we are trying to execute and make consistent profits on a day-to-day basis, you need options of assets to look at that ideally move a little bit different, or rather completely differently from each other. And the problem with crypto in general is that, let's say, I look at BNB, Ethereum and Solana, bro. I'm not just a Bitcoin trader. But the problem with that is if Bitcoin dumps, they all dump, right? So you're essentially looking at the same chart, just with a different packaging. So, but Forex, on the other hand, moves differently. Euro moves differently to NASDAQ, moves differently to gold, moves differently to USD Canadian, moves differently. You get the point. Just having access to Forex gives us different, just kind of opportunities where I don't have to feel because I'm only looking at Bitcoin, so I'm going to try to force something, even though I know for a fact that this is not the highest quantity setup that I could be taking. And that's where Forex comes into play, which brings me on to another point, right? It's not that this setup is bad. Yeah, there is a chance that, Bitcoin just continues dumping lower, but that's not the point. Point is that as a trader, what I'm looking for on a day-to-day basis is the highest possible quality trade idea. I'm not trying to take every trade idea. I'm trying to look through all of the assets on my list, figure out which ones have the basically highest likelihood of playing out in my favor. And that's the one I take. Just like how yesterday, I looked through more than 10 charts. What I identified was Bitcoin and oil. Now, it's not every day that I'm going to say Bitcoin is the best setup of the day. It's not every day that I'm going to say Bitcoin is the worst setup of the day, but you get the idea, right? In fact, let's get into it right now. Let's start things off with Euro. Euro, you have a bearish daily bias and you have a very clear order block over here. Now, in the event that you just come back into it, this is going to be the ideal setup to look for. Now, in terms of the 5-minute chart, yes, you're already showing a CISD towards the downside. And yes, in the event that you close beneath this level right here, this will become a new order block, and then you can trade that lower, and you have some really, really clear-cut liquidity levels over there. And that is just about 30 pips away from where price currently is, which is very much achievable, especially on the news day. Now, if I go onto NASDAQ, I'm already in this setup, and all of this is kind of prior shared within Blueprint, and if you're also in bootcamp, you will get access to this. Basically every single day I'm going to be sharing my trades, going through kind of a pre-market analysis and stuff like that. Like yesterday, oil, before I even filmed the video, it was already we were already in the oil trade during the London session. So yeah, that's again, remember at the start of the video I said if you wanted to work with us to basically get you funded in the next 90 days, then first in the description box below, this kind of early trade setup thing, it's also part of it, right? At the end of the day, we're going to teach you how to fish, but we're also going to show you we're still going to hand you some fish, every now and then, just to help speed that process along. But anyways, in terms of the daily chart, we have a bearish daily bias on NASDAQ. And in terms of the 1 hour chart, you've already gotten a bearish CISD, right? That's why I entered. So CISD already confirmed. And yeah, basically just aiming for about a 200-point drop, which for NASDAQ is super normal. Now, by the time you watch this video during the New York, you're just going to momentum trade this towards the downside. Now, in terms of gold, same thing here, right? You have a bearish daily bias and price has formed a bearish CISD literally about 20 minutes ago. And yeah, right now you're going to look for either a retracement into this order block over here or this larger order block over here. But either way, you're just going to look to momentum trade this towards the downside. And as for potential targets, obviously you have left behind some relatively equal lows. And you're starting to see the difference between, this NASDAQ trade and this gold trade versus the Bitcoin trade that we were looking at earlier, right? In here, you are heading towards the direction of the relatively equal lows, right? We have really clear targets. Whereas on Bitcoin, you're like, okay, we can't enter yet because we have relatively equal highs. You're starting to see a point here where I'm saying, okay, I'm just going to go for the highest quality setup that I could possibly have. And at the moment, that for me seems to be NASDAQ and gold. And obviously, by the time you watch this video, the London session's already over, then just wait for New York and you're going to be good. Either way, feel free to follow me on Twitter. I will be sharing some live execution once I get into it. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video, or potentially inside bootcamp if you decide I'm the right guy to help take you to the next level. Ciao, ciao.